We'll start the study session at 4:16 on 19.
All right. Good evening, Board. Thank you for meeting with us on the study session regarding the BEST grant. I first want to mention that Ms. Burke is not here, but although she is not here, she's done a tremendous amount of work throughout this process, and she stepped up and again did a ton of work working with co-op strategies and additional staff to make sure we had a good quality application moving forward with the BEST grant. Also have with us here Kevin Huber from Co-op Strategies, who helped us with the BEST grant application.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
So just want to start off by, again, going over the reason why we're here is to give the board an update on the BEST grant application with Adams City Middle School as well as Central Elementary. The BEST grant was established in 2008. We get funding for competitive grants for school districts that can be used for new construction of buildings or general construction and renovation throughout the schools. Our full BEST grant team consisted of Ms. Valdez, the principal at Central, Mr. Pearson, the principal at Adams City Middle School, Mr. Flynn, our grant accountant at Adams 14, Ms. Baca from the ESS building, myself, Mrs. Burke, Kevin Huber, and Sarah Baldwin from Co-op Strategies, who are our owner reps, as well as Ms. Honigsberg from the CDE Regional Manager for the BEST grant. The next visual is kind of a visual timeline of the process through the BEST grant. On the next page, we'll kind of go through a little bit more step-by-step of what this timeline really looks like. In October through December, we really start to collect data for what schools and get information as to what schools are in the most need, getting everything ready for everything that we want to put into the application. The next stage is January through February is really when we start meeting. Co-op Strategies comes in. We've been meeting with the schools, going out to get the updated information to really start putting the application data into the system because the application is due February 25th. Along with our EMO is also due the February 25th. So the February 25th is a big date for Adams 14. So knowing that it's due February 25th, this is the last meeting that we will have before we have to put that application in. So we really want to get any feedback and everything to the board before we get to February 25th to make sure that you're updated and know everything that we're looking at and kind of show you the process that we've gone through. Once it's submitted, between April and May, we'll be getting reviewed. It'll be getting reviewed by the CCAB, which is the Capital Construction Assistance Board. They might be asking for more information, maybe possibly different pictures or more information specific to that we can give them information through. May 15th will be the day that we get to present, and I believe we have a minute and a half. Is it 2 minutes? We'll have 2 minutes to present of why we need a new school at Adams 14.
2 minutes?
We have 2 minutes to present. So they will have a big binder of all of our information that they can see ahead of time, but we get 2 minutes to present at that day.
And the discussion afterwards.
Yes. And there's discussion afterwards. We will most likely be May 15th. They typically do that by alphabetical order. Last year, we were the second school district to present. So hopefully we'll come out with another school and another BEST grant moving forward from that meeting. And then in June, we'll kind of get the verbal okay from the State Board of Education. And typically, I believe the State Board has agreed with the CCAB's recommendation. Kevin, you might know.
For the last 10 years.
So for the last 10 years, they've always agreed with the CCAB's recommendation. How we collected all of this data, we did use a lot of the 2010 master facility plan, but I also wanted to mention, we are working with Co-op Strategies for our new master facility plan, so it's not just all old data. We kind of use the 2010 master facility plan as a base, but at the same time working with Co-op Strategies going into these schools to update the master facility plan because by May, I think we have a deadline of trying to get the new master facility plan done and in place. So we used this as a base and added more information to that as this was 9 years ago when we did that master facility plan. I'll let Kevin talk a little bit about the CDE reports.
So one other thing I'd like to mention about the BEST grant is it's tiered by priority. So a number one priority is health, safety, and security. And more recently, in the last year or so, the statute was changed to include technology with that. And then the second tier is overcrowding, and then the third tier was kind of all other types of projects. So we really try to look at which schools have the most health and safety concerns and have the systems that are the most efficient, that need to be updated. And so when we were doing this, the two schools that popped up using CDE's updated reports, using your 2010 master plan, and then just, talking with the district, Adams City Middle School came up as one of the higher priorities. It's a grant that you also applied for last year, and it did not get awarded. So the board, when they're doing their review, from April till May, they have a little scoring sheet that they fill out for each grant, and it sets a score that then they use to prioritize all these grants for the state board. And so we've also taken that information, the comments that they gave us in there, and we're addressing some of those concerns. So with Adams City Middle School last year, there was a lot of language in there that related to overcrowding. Some of the comments came back that the board felt like, yes, there were health and safety issues, but a couple of them scored priority too because the focus, some of them thought it was more focused on overcrowding. So this year, we're really analyzing the data. We've taken this updated report, walked all the schools with the principals, made our notes, and so right now we're in the process of filling out the BEST application. And so CDE has only assessed 3 of your buildings. They did this back when BEST was started in 2008, 2009. They didn't know what was out there. So as part of the BEST grant program, they needed an inventory of all the school facilities throughout the state. And that data was never set to get updated. So they've actually brought that program in-house. It's called Facility Insight, and they have in-house people going out and reassessing all these facilities, and they're trying to do that every 3 to 5 years. Well, they ran into some snags, and so the bigger districts right now are not getting all their facilities assessed. They're starting out in the rural districts and working their way into the metro area. So right now we have assessments for Central, Alsop, and Adams City Middle School. Another reason Adams City Middle School was selected is because, if you remember the proposal last year, we want to get both those schools on the same site. Mm-hmm. And so we're in the conceptual design phase. As you'll see, there's a drawing in here. So as we're developing the Alsop site, we have to keep in mind the middle school as well and how that's all going to work together with shared roads, fields, and everything like that. So right now we feel Adams City Middle School is our best bet for writing a grant as far as a priority and fitting in with BEST at this time. You'll see as we go through, we have the information on Central. On here I have something, it says FCI. That's one of the factors that CDE looks at. It's called Facility Condition Index. And what that percentage represents is the cost of renovations or stuff that needs to be deficiencies that the school has now versus the cost of replacement. So the cost of replacement is a little misleading if you look on here. They're saying the replacement value is just under $35 million. That's if you were to replace it for a 1-to-1 of what was used for the building back in 1960. It doesn't take into account to all the new technologies and systems and everything. Those would technically be an upgrade. So you'll see when we get through the pricing, that's why there's a little shift in that amount. The adequacy index, it's tricky to explain. It's a whole list of questions that they do, and it's stuff that you can't put a dollar value to. So if you think about like the layout of Adams City Middle School, for example, where it's just it's hard to get through the hallways. You know, it takes a long time to get from this end of the building to the other. Lack of restrooms. Those are stuff that they don't really put a cost to. So if it's missing a restroom, they're not going to add a cost in to add restrooms to make it adequate. So the higher the adequacy index rating, the kind of the worse it is adequately. So it's not, there's a lot of things that are wrong over there that could be fixed to make it a more efficient and adequate facility for the programs you're trying to teach and just a lot of things in general. So any questions on that? It's a little lengthy description, but. So let's go over to the matching funds. How we come up with these is right now with the ALSUP project, we are working with RBB Architects and Franson Pittman Contractors, and they're helping us get this pricing on here. And how it starts is first they need to get a program plan. So we took the program plan, which is basically the spaces that we had from last year, and the architect has met with the principals of the school and gone through that and said, okay, you know, you need this many classrooms, this size cafeteria. Then we get a square footage of what that facility is going to look like, and that's part of what we have to turn in with the BEST grant. Then we take that with Franson Pittman and we look at all the building elements, and then we also look at any site things. So we know with Adams City we need a track and field, shared baseball field, stuff like that. So he's putting, just right now, it's a rough estimate. So this isn't the set in stone amount, and this is also something we'll be reviewing with CDE that can make adjustments before the BEST board gets it. So we have some time to dial this in, but right now, you can see if we were to go with Central, it's coming in just under $34 million. So this includes all costs, hard costs for building the building, and then design fees, lead, all the other stuff that we have to do. So all in, just under 34 million. This year, your guys' match percent is 45%. I won't go into how that's calculated. It's very difficult to explain, but they look at a lot of different factors, and then you're also ranked against all the other districts, 177 districts in the state, and then they come up with this formula that's set in statute. So this year, you guys are at 45%. It's up a little bit from where you're at last year. So for Central, we would need to come up with just over $15 million. Again, rough estimate. Just want you to know these aren't set in stone. We just got these put together because we just got the program plans developed. With Adams City Middle School, we're looking at just $56.3 million to do that. There are some costs in there that make that a little bit higher. We would need to demo and abate the existing school, and where the building is falling on the new site, as you'll see in the drawing, there's still a couple buildings remaining there from the old high school that we need to also demo and abate. So we still have to get those tested, and then so we have some costs added in there for that. So that's driving the cost up as well. Also on here, and maybe Sean can speak to this as well, we've been looking at different sources of matches. And I think what we're going to put in the grant application this year is 2019 bond election, using district, general, and reserve funds, potential sale of the old ALSUP, ES, and Adams City Middle School sites as well. The statute, you have to be very clear where your matching funds come from. It's just one of the things you have to outline. So we like to add more in there. And then if we didn't use your general fund, for example, we don't have to. But it would be an option for us too, just so you know that. So the first one, the drawing that we have, this is hot off the press from last Friday from our architect. Again, still very conceptual. We're meeting once a week, almost twice a week in some cases, with the two committees we've put together, the ARC and the DAG group. And so the architect is just asking lots of questions, getting lots of info from everyone. Also, we've also invited Martin from the middle school over to start being a part of this, so he can help raise any concerns with where the middle school is going to lie. But right now, this is kind of where we're falling, to have the track and field on the north side, ALSUP on the lower left, and then the middle school on the lower right with shared fields in between. We had we can talk more, but they've moved the site around all over. Putting the elementary school up made it really tight, having it be a two-story building up against those houses. A lot of people didn't like that. It also made the traffic flow kind of hard for drop-off. I can't see what street that is with the C. Cherry Street. So right now, this is kind of where we're at. I would bet you that this will most likely change as we continue to move forward. One of the things BEST requires is, especially when you're going for a big project like this, that you have worked with an architect and put some conceptual drawings together. They show that in your slideshow at the BEST board meeting while you're presenting. So if we go next, we threw together some renderings of Central. We ran into a couple issues on Central, which we'll get to in a minute. Kind of difficult to build on this site right now. We've been exploring other options. I'll let Sean speak to this with the land swaps and whatnot. I'm sure you guys have heard of. We know the preschool isn't in that good of shape, so all the architect's done here is kind of looked at what does a two-story building look like. I think it's around 76,000 square feet. I don't have it on here. So here's kind of what that would look like. Let's mess around with this and put it on that site. So that's a potential spot of where they could put the new building. And then you can see when you go to the next slide, there would be two phases. So we would build build the new building and then move the kids over and then demo the existing building and then do the site work. So they threw together some ideas. This is one potential way it could work. We could also look at building it on another site as well. So, do you want me to start this one? Okay.
So we are looking for more guidance on Central. It's kind of our recommendation that we hold off on Central, and part of that reason is what we found out from the state. So on this slide, we received this from the state about a week and a half ago, we knew that there was some state parks and recreation areas on Central, and they sent us this, which is basically everything except the building has to be recreational areas. So if we're putting the plan together, it has to be approved by the state recreation department before we can put it in the application. Because once we put it in the BEST grant application, we can't change it. So Sheila and I talked about this with the executive team, and we thought that without being able to get state feedback, and we feel like we wouldn't be able to put a quality application for Central, that we were going to have to take that off of the application and just try to move forward with Adams City Middle School. Because just with all the factors going into it, this being probably the biggest one, not getting feedback from the state to see if they would allow us to utilize this plan and have the plan approved by the state before we put this together, it was our recommendation to not move forward with a Central application.
I just wanted to say it's also risky to move forward with something like this with the BEST board. They really want all your ducks in a row and have a good solution in place. And running into this and not necessarily having another site secured or a plan to move those kids was a big issue. So that's another reason we talked about doing that at this time. Well, as we're developing the new master plan, it'd give everybody a lot more time to come up with a better solution over the next year to get a solid grant together for next year. So that's what we're requesting.
So again, the objective was to go over our updates from what we're doing with this current year's BEST applications for the Adams City Middle School and Central Elementary. We'd like to get your feedback. Again, here are the key dates up here for the timeline moving forward. We would love to get your feedback on the applications, and if you have any questions that we can answer tonight before we submit the application by the 25th.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. Great job, your staff and your team put together. That's perfect. Thank you so much. My question is, since you came with Central in the state park that's around Central, can you find out, is there any other district schools that might have state parks around it that we can foresee in the future that you might say, hey, wait a minute, you know?
We did check in with the state. We do know for sure that Kearney has something similar as well. And I do believe Kemp might be in a similar situation as well. So knowing that, we did reach out to the state to see what we can pull. Regina's checking with all the other schools as well right now, knowing that at some point we're going to be going back to the state asking for best grants for all of our schools. We want to try and verify with the state that if we have to have recreation areas in the buildings or on those areas, that we take care of it now, and we're not coming into this situation again like we didn't know about Central until this current last couple weeks. But we do know Kearney and Central and most likely Kemp are in the same situation.
I was wondering because Central was added on to later. It was an initial, like, U-shape. Do you remember, Dave? It was just, when you walk in the front door, that wing and then the next wing. That's all that was there before, when I went there, long time ago.
I think
So then they added that other wing and the rest of it. So there should be some type of paperwork or something.
there's a contract that we have with the state. So it was either late 60s or early 70s when we came into an agreement with them. We got that property back then for about $30,000, and the state matched about another $30,000 for us to have the property. But in that, we had an MOU that said we have to maintain that as recreational land. Back.
Well, I was
to that.
wondering, but I mean, what approval came back to build that addition?
Yeah, and we're still researching all that. So we did send all the contract and this data all to John Farrow as well. He's under the recommendation or the thought process that if we go to the state and we wanted to build here, that the state would be okay as long as we tell them that all this other property outside of the building here, would still be used for recreational land. He doesn't think that the state would have an issue that. Also, if we wanted to build on a different property, as long as we would maintain the same acreage for recreational land, John didn't think that the state would have an issue with that. We just have to have it approved by them ahead of time and have that plan in place, if we're going to go for Central next year, to have that for the best application. So it was the recommendation from John that it probably would be okay as long as we still have that agreement in place and maintain the recreational land at the same acreage.
Because they did the same at Kearney. Kearney
Correct.
was added on to after the fact, and it was a park also.
Question, if that is the state land and it's recreation, is the state giving us money for that property? Because under the lotto, money from that lotto should be granted to recreational situations. So I'm wondering, is the state giving us any extra money for keeping up those recreational
Since they're parks.
areas?
So they did, we bought it from them in the late 60s, I believe, and I can share the contract with you for that, but it was kind of a match. At the time, they said that property was worth about $60,000. They gave us 50% off, and so we had to pay 50% of that. With these properties, we do have an with the city where they actually maintain the properties. But we don't get any money currently from them, no.
We going into executive session after this, right?
Yeah.
Because I was at the urban renewal with the city. So since it was an executive session, I'm not able to speak about it in public. So when we go into executive session, I like to talk about, it wouldn't take but 5 minutes to bring everybody up to date about urban renewal, about the dog track.
Right.
and bring you gentlemen, because I'm sure y'all like to know what's going on about that, so
Okay.
it won't take about 5 minutes. But the 2010 Comprehensive Facility Master Plan for Adams 14, you gentlemen working on it today for 2019. When would that be available?
The goal is to have that complete at the end of May. So we're going through that and going through the process. We're currently working on some of the enrollment projections, pieces of that, and starting to get the team together to come out to the buildings. But the goal is to, I believe, I sent on the schedule to Monica, and I believe we forwarded the schedule for the plan onto the board.
And will the district buildings, schools, change probably?
Yes.
10
So,
to
you know,
19?
from the 2010 facility plan, nothing was really implemented, or we didn't follow that at all. So some of the schools have had new roofs put on them. Some of them had some upgrades put to them. So there will be some updates to that. It will look different. You know, some of them have aged differently, and some have had upgrades, some haven't. So there'll be a lot of different options of, you know, this might be the priority. So we're going to have a lot of engagement through that process to say, so we can meet with the board. We're going to meet with the community, meet with the principals and staff members to get their feedback and everything throughout that process, and kind of try and put everything in a priority list and have some recommendations of what we need to look at in a priority list.
Yeah, we'll have like the top recommended, you know, obviously everyone typically ends up falling within health and safety, those big issues, you know, roofs, maybe security entrances, stuff like that. So those typically end up being your highest priority. So we'll have those bulleted, and then we'll also kind of have the next tier. You know, maybe within the next 3 to 5 years, these systems, you know, will need to be replaced. And then we can look at, we'll give funding options and stuff like that. And then we'll also have your updated demographics and enrollment projections that come with like a high, medium, and low. And so there's multiple solutions for all the facilities as well.
But they can't be made, the school cannot be made bigger, am I correct? It has to be made for the population enrollment we have now.
It does, and so through the design phase, what you're seeing right now, the square footage we have is at a 75% utilization. So that means this new school, let's say for Adams City Middle School, we can fit 25% more if we really had to cram that full. So we're only at 75% utilization on that square footage. And then through the design process, we also look at if we need to put an addition onto this building down the road, you know, 20 years down the road, where would that go and how would that look? So those are other things we're looking at as we do the design.
Talking to that aspect is when we build this, one of the situations, and I keep hearing about it with the people that live in the Fairfax area, they were also students, and then we redid the whole thing and send them to Monaco. What are the chances of getting those people to go back to their real neighborhood school? What you take, I don't know how many students feed into Monaco from that area, but I know now they used to be, because they say the traffic, well, if you go down 72nd, that's no
Bad. I think if we're kind of reorganizing the school lines, I think that's a discussion we need to have with the board to determine that. But I think, you know, we might have some of that demographic information through this process that might maybe point us in that direction. And then we can sit down and have that conversation with the board to decide if that's something we want to move forward with in the future. But, you know, through the demographic study, we should have that data that we can make some educated guesses as to what would be best and how this might look in 5-10 years if people are building up north more in Monaco, or if we need to push more back towards Alsop.
And then the other question I have is, as I look at for Alsop and the AC Middle, that's the same way, and I think Connie can remember, was the way the old high school was. You know, the building that you have that's there now, that used to be the elementary. Now you're going to make it as the middle school, which is fine. And then you're going to have that open field and then Adams City or Alsop, correct? the small one. That's basically how it was. But we still have the track there. Is that track so bad that we have to tear it down, or is it, can we save that track and use it with the new school? Because I know that track's about
10 years old.
10 years old, and they put over $1 million into that track. So I haven't been on it, but I know it's still being used a lot by the people in the community in that area.
Yeah, so, I mean, it would take some money to get it back into good condition. It's kind of just sat out there, but I wouldn't say it's in terrible condition right now. Going through the process, meeting with the community, with the elementary school and the middle school, this probably isn't, like Kevin said, the final version of what it's going to look like. But we're trying to get input from both sides to make sure that we wanted Martin in the middle school to be involved, so they weren't stuck with what the elementary decided, and they just have to live with it. At this point, it's probably not cost efficient to keep the current track.
The other thing they're looking at, we're having geotech testing done on the site, so they've come and tested the soil, and they are also doing, it's a new site survey for this. So there's a lot of things our civil engineers will look at, and drainage is one of the big things, and that kind of sits up pretty high. So they would have to make sure that the drainage and everything would work. There's a lot of complications around that. I can't speak to it, and we're still in the process of that, but we're definitely looking at that.
Okay.
Mr. Milner, on this proposal to relocate also in Adams City Middle School to the old Adams City High School site, did you run across any information around pipelines running underneath the property and maybe those being a reason that relocation wasn't feasible in the past?
We did go through, title work and all kinds of that situations. In this area is kind of the biggest concern of what we were looking for, which is why we wanted to put the elementary over here first. There wasn't really anything that we were able to find over here. Obviously, there could be something when we're doing the initial stages of construction that we didn't know about, and that's kind of why you have a contingency in place if there's something in there that we find. But from all the paperwork that we were able to find, we didn't find any big or major issues. The biggest concern, really, looking at the middle school over here, is there's environmental studies that we're doing, and because we have Riggy oil right over here, and I think there's a dry cleaner somewhere in the vicinity at some point too. That stuff was in the air, and some of it might be in the sample. So what Kevin was talking about before, through the environmental study, there was a possible up to $200,000 piece of equipment that we'll have to install to make sure that some of the mitigation. It was explained to me similar to a radon system of how that would work. So as far as the pipes and everything, all the information that we have shows us that we shouldn't have any issues. But again, we have contingency put aside just in case there is something there that we're not hoping for. But it shouldn't be anything of a surprise. We have blueprints of the old buildings, and we have data from the city from when everything was put in.
But there was remember the gasoline station there on the corner of 69th and Brighton?
69. You
What-
mean that,
Not across the
Perico's.
street by the, yeah.
but that was only a pump. There wasn't really a gas station. The other part was a liquor store.
But I thought, my understanding was there was
Over here
oils or something,
is
No, it'd be over on 69th
69th and
and
Brighton.
Brighton Boulevard, right in that area.
You know where that first building is standing by itself?
Right.
It was more at the corner by the light. And my understanding was there was tanks under there they had to pull out,
Oh,
and I don't know what chemical they had in there,
say
but
there was tanks over there where the service center's at too.
Yeah.
There was conversation that there could be pipes
Yeah,
in this
right,
area. But from all the studies we have, there weren't any concerns that it would be an issue if they were still there. But we'll keep looking into that, and if there are, again, we do have contingency money. Typically, is 5% of the total cost.
And the project plan here, or the site map, anticipates doing away with the existing structures on the property?
Correct. So part of that $53 million cost would be the abatement and demo of both buildings, as well as the current middle school.
Sean, do we know what's going to be built there at Riggy's, where the old Riggy station is? Because that's all fenced off. Something's coming in. I don't know. Have we heard?
I have not heard. I don't know. No.
Okay, we need to
Yep.
move on, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But you'll get all the updated stuff to us. Okay,
We'll give you all the final applications and present and everything
Okay.
before the 25th.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring this special meeting, okay, to the study session to an end. And then there's a need for an executive session this evening under CRS 24-6-402, 4B, legal advice, board conference with the attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific matters. Can I get a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to proceed into executive session pursuant to the statutory citation listed by the chair.
Can I have a second?
Madam Chair.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Monica?
Dr. Hyde,
Aye.
Mr. Moreno,
Aye.
Mrs. Quintana,
Aye.
Mr. Rolla,
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Aye.